Welcome to my Halloween month special, where I review a bunch of scary movies for the rest of the month. And I would finally turn this light off because it's hurting my eyes. But seriously guys, welcome to the start of my horror movie binge where I review a bunch of movies that are for Halloween this year. I even have the whole background displayed for Halloween and I am very excited for this time of year. And for this video, we are going to be starting off with Scream, directed by Wes Craven, and is a fan favorite for a lot of horror fans, myself included. This is about a teenage girl named Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, who is terrorized by a killer wearing a Ghostface mask who already killed someone that she already knew, and he's doing it with horror movies for his deadly game. I've been wanting to review a Scream film on my channel for quite some time, ever since I started the channel, but never got around to doing it. Like when Scream 5 was coming out, I missed the opportunity to review that because I had stuff going on back then, and unfortunately the same thing happened when Scream 6 came out. I had a chance to review it, but didn't get around to reviewing that film. And maybe I'll still review those films one day, but for this channel, I never got a chance to review any of the Scream films until now. This movie came out in 1996, where people were getting tired of so many horror sequels happening and not working out, and when this film came out, it became a new breath of fresh air for horror fans. People were saying that it redefined the horror genre and gave it new life for horror fans to come and watch. And to this day, Scream is still considered to be one of the best horror movies of all time. Even I think it's one of the best. Like, one of the big things that people were saying about the film is that it takes some of the horror cliches that a lot of horror fans were tired of seeing and just switches them around for this film. And that's what makes this film so much fun to watch, and it's one of those films that is able to blend both comedy and horror very well. Like, it would have some moments that are actually funny, and it would also have some moments where it's supposed to be terrifying, and it doesn't feel out of place with the humor. It works very well in the film. It, of course, later on became a big franchise with 5 more sequels after this one, as well as a TV series on MTV. And one of the things that I love about Scream is that it's one of those movies where it blends both horror and comedy very well, and it doesn't ruin the tone at all. It still mixes very well, and most of that humor is meta humor, which makes sense because this movie is about a guy that's killing people based off of horror movies that he's seen, and that's what makes this film a lot of fun to watch. And for me, it is my favorite film in the Scream franchise. I do like Scream 2, Scream 3 is okay, and I do like Scream 4, 5, and 6, but this one still remains to me as the best one in the franchise because it's one of those films that feels like lightning in the bottle. It doesn't feel like any movie that's copying off of this managed to be as good as Scream because it's that special. Because besides the Scream sequels, there were a lot of films in the 90s after Scream that tried to copy the success of that film. For instance, movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend, which, by the way, Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream, also wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer, and he actually wrote that one before he wrote Scream, which that doesn't mean that I Know What You Did Last Summer was copying off of Scream, it just happened that way. Scream came out first and I Know What You Did Last Summer came out second. But since this movie does well at blending in comedy, it still works at being a thriller and slasher film as well. In particular, the opening scene with Drew Barrymore, where he's on the phone with Ghostface and they have a little conversation about what her favorite scary movie is, and then that later becomes a serious scene. Also, fun fact, the voice that Drew Barrymore is talking to on the phone and in the rest of the Scream franchise is Roger L. Jackson, who also voiced Mojo Jojo from Powerpuff Girls. And after that whole opening scene is done, we now meet Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, who does a really good job as the character. And her character has dealt with some trauma in the past where something happened to her that she hasn't recovered from mentally, and she is not the typical girl that becomes a victim to Ghostface and falls for her tricks. She is smart. She is able to figure some things out about him. Like in one scene where she's on the phone with him for the first time and she's trying to see how he's doing this trick to try to kill her by going outside to see where he is and tries to taunt him. And both this film and most of the other Scream films have made her an awesome character. Neve Campbell is great as Sidney Prescott, and she, for me, is one of the best horror movie characters of all time, and she easily makes this franchise a lot of fun to watch. Not gonna count Scream 6 though. Even though I do like Scream 6, she is unfortunately not in that film. Another thing that makes this film a lot of fun is that when Ghostface is on screen, he feels like a real person that can get himself injured, and he feels like something that could happen in real life. Because when you look at the horror movie icons like Michael Myers from Halloween, or Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, or Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 2, not Part 1 because he wasn't in Part 1, all three of those icons are great horror villains, but they're very supernatural. They feel like something that wouldn't happen in real life. Because when you try to kill characters like Michael Myers, he would easily get back up after getting shot at multiple times and stabbed multiple times and thrown off of a roof multiple times. Same goes to Jason Voorhees. You would shoot him, but he would still get back up. The same doesn't go to Freddy Krueger because he's a supernatural being in people's dreams, so you wouldn't try to kill him in dreams. But when you look at Ghostface, he's not a supernatural being. He's a human person. When he gets shot or stabbed, he feels like a real person. And he doesn't kill his victims perfectly, because some of his victims would outsmart him for a while, and Ghostface would have to think of other ways of trying to kill them. What I also love about Scream is that it is a very fast-paced movie. It keeps your attention. It doesn't add like a random out-of-place scene or a moment that drags. It feels very natural, and it keeps your attention on what's going on. And all that works very well with Wes Craven's directing and Kevin Williamson's writing. And Wes Craven was known for making very fast-paced horror films, with his earlier films like Nightmare on Elm Street and The Hills Have Eyes. And this is easily my favorite Wes Craven film. I do like the other Scream films he did, and I do like Nightmare on Elm Street, and I even like some of his other films like People Under the Stairs and Red Eye, but Scream remains my favorite film of his. Because with Scream in particular, it's one of his films that feels very different compared to his other films, and it feels fresh for the horror genre. And Kevin Williamson also did well with the writing for the film, who later got to write films like I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I just mentioned earlier, and The Faculty. And I do think he's a talented writer when it comes to horror, because after this film, he got to write a few more of the Scream films, as well as coming back to direct Scream 7. And what makes the writing really good is that the self-aware meta humor for the tropes and the cliches definitely adds up to more of the story and its humor. Like in one scene where Sidney Prescott is talking to Ghostface on the phone, and she's talking about why she doesn't like to watch horror movies, and her reason for that is very clear. It makes sense, because that's kind of what the horror movies were back in the 90s. In fact, that's kind of still a thing in today's time. Or in this one scene where Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy, is talking to this group about the rules of horror films while they're watching Halloween and what not to do in a horror movie. Like, it's one of those films where they first acknowledge those tropes and try to make fun of them and have them work for the film. Like, one of those rules is that you never say, "I'll be right back," because you're never gonna come back after leaving the room, because you can get killed by the killer around that time. And there are also some subtle Easter eggs to other horror films, like one of the characters' name is Billy Loomis, played by Skeet Ulrich. I don't know if I got that name right or not. Sorry if I got it wrong. And of course, the name Billy Loomis is inspired by Dr. Samuel Loomis from the Halloween films. And one last thing I gotta say about the film, in fact, it might be the best best thing about the film is that when you try to learn about the killer, you don't get a clear idea of who the killer is, because it would show characters that are either movie experts or they just reference horror movies a few times and would give you an idea on who that killer could be, but you never really get the full idea until the very end when the full reveal happens, which I'm not gonna get into who the killer is, just in case if you haven't seen the movie yet, but when that is revealed, it does make sense for the rest of the film, because when you watch the film and you think back and rewatch the film and pay attention to like some of the small parts of the film, you get to understand how this killer does his stuff. You get to understand what this character was doing throughout the film. It makes sense for the rest of the film, and it makes the film a lot of fun, as well as other things I just mentioned. Guys, Scream is a great movie for horror fans. I love it. I think it is a great movie, and I do recommend watching Scream if you haven't yet, because if you're a horror fan but you haven't seen Scream, then what are you doing? Go watch Scream. It's a great movie. And out of all the other horror franchises like Halloween, Saw, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream is my favorite horror franchise ever. I'm gonna give Scream an A+. So guys, this is the start for my Halloween month special where I get to review more films like this, so stay tuned for more films to come. There are going to be some movies like this that you are familiar with, and some horror movies that you might not be familiar with, and some that you might have not realized that it's a horror movie, so look forward to those reviews to come from my channel. I already have a few of them planned, so look forward to those. And of course, there's going to be some newer ones as well, and with those videos coming out, I'll be right back. And as always, if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.